So in the guy's house, when I first got there, we had to shower with a clear shower curtain because they were like, well, we don't want you.
So tell me your name, where you're from.
uh, Dillon from the Flat Rock Piney Bay area, which is where I was picked up from with the Adullam. So
And that's in Arkansas, right?
yeah,
Really small town.
yeah, it's between London and Knoxville. And if you don't know where that's at, it's between Clarksville and Knoxville.
So. And if you don't know where that's at, it's between Northwest Arkansas and Little Rock.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so tell me a little bit about just what you enjoy doing in your spare time now. What makes you happy?
So I like spending time with my kids, and with my wife. I play Yu-Gi-Oh! So it's
Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yes.
Okay, does that have anything to do with like the old Yu-Gi-Oh from like our childhood? Or?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of.
What is that?
It's just a card game that people play, like Pokemon or Magic. It's just
okay.
Yeah, it's just another card game that people play, and I've made a lot of friends through it. Got a lot of support through them, because then all of them have wished me happy birthday. I've got friends in New York that I've never met that I've traded cards with.
Oh my!
So yeah,
that's cool. So that's like your community, like your support.
Yeah.
People who lift you up.
Yeah. And we joke and make fun of each other, but that's I mean, it always helps.
Yeah. And you've been through a lot in your life.
Yeah. So I grew up with just my dad, and he wasn't the greatest. He had drug problems. The first time I remember ever seeing my mother was when I was 8.
Wow.
I don't remember having a memory prior to being 5.
Wow.
And there's pictures of me with my mother and my siblings and stuff before 5. I just don't remember it. Yeah. So I mean, my mind has blocked it out, and so that's kind of traumatic. My biological mother sold us out to my brother's grandfather, who was a registered sex offender in the church, was a youth pastor, and she sold us to him for bingo money. She would drop us off, he would give her money, and then she would leave, and then he would do a lot of really horrible things to us when we were children.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. I mean, it's part of the journey that I've been on now. So,
right. Right.
I guess the reason I'm coming out and doing this now, 15 years later, is I'm a dad now, 4, and I want to provide a better world and opportunity for my kids than what I was given, and I want to be the dad that I never had, and so I don't ever want them to know what it's like to fully struggle and have trauma that I've got.
Right. So. And that's amazing for you to be brave to share that, because the thing is, this is so common. About 1 in 3 women have had some kind of assault on them most of the time when they're kids.
Yep.
And about 1 in 6 boys. Yep. But they think that that's more because not always reported, especially with boys.
Well, because we're encouraged not to talk about it.
Right.
As much as like
against the stereotypical too.
Right. Hold it in, don't say anything, which was really common with Adullam, and like with guys like, oh, you're fine, nothing ever happened, and I'm here to tell you that that's
be a man.
Yeah, it's very much
toxic.
Not the case. Yeah, masculinity was very rampant there, and in society itself it is.
Yes.
I'm very against it.
Yeah,
because I don't want my son to grow up and think that if something's wrong, I can tough it out, I don't want to talk about it. No, that's not how that works.
Right.
So, in a healthy world. So,
exactly.
And that's something I've had to learn, and so I'm just trying to pass that down. And for everybody that's watching, or all the guys that were involved with any of this or have had any trauma, tell you it's okay to come forward, and it's not to hold it in, because it can eat you alive as a person. And oftentimes you turn to addiction, or you find yourself doing things or thinking things that you wouldn't if you were in what I would say healthy childhood and adulthood. So
right. And the thing is, this happens a lot to people. And a lot of times when someone has gone through this kind of abuse, it's more likely to happen again.
Yep.
And so it's nothing to do with that person or that child. It's not your fault.
Right.
But we do not often enough hold the adults accountable.
Right.
There was something wrong there. And there can only be predators when there's people who enable them.
Well, and not only that, but like, I feel like, because that's what you're used to, you seek it.
Yes, you don't know it's wrong.
Right.
And it's also easier for that predator to know that they can convince you to do it.
Right, and it's normal to you, so you go along with it, which is so how I've gotten into so many situations in my life where it's turned out horribly for me, including Adullam. So.
Well, but you say you gotten yourself into so many, but you were a victim in that.
Well, yes, and part of that was growing up my dad's ideology about raising a kid was, I'm going to let you make your own decisions.
That's how my dad was too. He did not protect me because of that belief.
Yeah, and he was more of the mindset of, if it fucks up, then it's your fault, not mine, and you learned your lesson, and you can't reflect it back on me, which is,
sounds exactly like Mark and Leslie.
Not at all the way to parent kids or run your life. You're supposed to protect your kids, and if they do something that's not good, you're supposed to tell them and rein them in and help guide them, not just give them an open prairie and be like, go. So
yes, and like we've talked about with a bunch of the other survivors already, taking accountability when we're wrong, as a parent, as a person, as a pastor, whatever you are, we can always be wrong.
Oh yeah, we're human, it happens.
Yeah. So and it's not about being wrong, it's about admitting it.
Well, I mean, I heard something a long time ago that the only perfect person to ever walk the planet was Jesus, and they put him on a cross, so everybody else is fair game.
Yeah. So tell me how you ended up meeting Mark and Leslie.
So I had been traveling around with my dad and went on a little expedition, and then I came back to the church that I grew up at, which was Flat Rock First Assembly of God. And the people there were talking about the youth group, and I had all these kids, and that I would enjoy it, and that it was a great experience. And so,
why do you think they were telling you about that?
Well, they probably, they knew my dad, because there was a lot of family members in that church, and so they knew that how I was being raised as a single parent who was a drug addict, that maybe this would be a good chance for me to get out, or they knew that my dad would let me do whatever I wanted, so that maybe he would let me go, and so they were trying to help me out, I guess, but that kind of backfired on them.
Yeah, we're always trying to like pass kids along from one house to the next.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Even if parents aren't the best, I think that is why we have things like child protective services, and they're not always perfect either.
No, by any means. No, because there's a lot of cases that you hear of, and you're like, why the hell didn't you do anything? And they're like, well, there's worse. And you're like, there's worse than that.
Exactly. Yeah. But then we also are not evaluating some of these places that claim to be so good for kids.
Right.
And the kids are suffering, whether that be foster homes or ministries or teen ranches or whatever it is.
Well, that's the thing about deception, right? Is they put up a great facade to fool people, and they can get away with it for so long, but how much damage is done in the time that it takes people to figure it out. So
yes, especially for child knowers, like what I'm talking about. They know exactly what to do and to say.
Well,
to
that's part of grooming, right? Is because they're told to act and sense and be a certain way. So part of that. So
right. So you met Mark and Leslie through this church. Everybody's telling you, hey, they're really good, that they're like, I don't know what, like a family or whatever.
Yeah, they pitched it as a good family environment with a bunch of teens, and I'd be around people my age, so it would be a good thing for me. So,
and you were how old at the time?
I was 15, and so at the time, so whenever my dad and I were talking to Mark about getting it, which is we related through Mark and not Leslie. And they pitched it as Mark does in his charming ways, whatever, that it was great. And so
we're going to take care of him.
Right.
Give him something good.
Yeah. Give him a direction and help him learn the word of God and
learn responsibilities.
Yes. Right. And, so through all the, whatever, I call it like courting with my dad and me, eventually decided that I was going to go, because my dad ultimately, again, left it up to me. And I was like, well, I'll go. So we went to the house, brought all my stuff, and we actually had to sign a contract for me to stay there.
So you had to sign a contract. So this is interesting, because I was at this house whenever Dillon was, and I never had to sign a contract. I didn't even know there was contracts at that time.
So I feel like it was probably something that they added new as they were progressing through, because
and you were also more vulnerable.
Right. And my dad was, like I said, on drugs, and so
and you had Social Security.
Yeah, and so they withheld my checks from me.
So of course they wanted you to sign a contract.
Yeah. They withheld all the checks that I was supposed to get from my dad from me, saying that they were going to use it to my benefit, and anytime I needed anything, they would give me the money to do it, which was complete bullshit, because I never saw it the whole time I was there, a matter of, I don't know, 10, 11 months.
So what you're saying is the whole 10 or 11 months you were there, they took your Social Security benefit check.
Yep.
And they did not give that to you or let you make the decision on what was happening.
Absolutely.
And
not.
Lord knows we didn't have like nice clothes, or we didn't go to the doctor, nothing like that.
No, actually, it was like the doctor goes, I got sick one time. They stuck me in Julio's room and just prayed over me while I had the flu for a week, and didn't give me any meds to help me get better. Wow. And I got really, really sick, and I was running a really high fever, and they did absolutely not shit for me. So.
Well, you're not the only person who's had that, because a lot of us have had health issues that weren't addressed correctly.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So tell me a little bit more about what it was like once you got in Adullam.
So after we signed the papers, I walked my dad out to the vehicle and he left. And I haven't really said this before, but I kind of felt something. I don't know, maybe in my soul, I guess. But as soon as my dad left, I felt like there was a heavy depression that came down, and I was like, "Oh shit, what did I just do? This is
Something felt wrong.
something is not right here." And went back in the house, and I mean, for the first couple of days, it was whatever routine that they had to get used to it, and then all the other stuff came with it. So, um, being there for me was, I want to say it was unique, I guess, because I was the youngest kid at the time they had taken in other than their biological kids.
Yeah.
I was 15. Everybody else was 17, 18, 19. We had a 20-year-old.
Yeah. I think I was probably 16 or 17 at that time.
Yeah, everybody was either a sophomore, a senior, or junior in high school, which left me at the junior high by myself. So again, it was a unique situation where there was nobody with me at school, and I was the youngest one there. So and to be frankly honest, I got treated like shit the whole time I was there because I was younger. So
yeah, they had certain kids that they would treat much worse, and Dillon was one of these people. And I've mentioned Dillon in one of my own personal stories that traumatized me, but he's probably going to do some clarifying today on that.
Yeah, we can get into that a little bit later on, but
that's up to you. You do not.
No, I'm fine with it.
But yes, I do believe that you got treated a lot worse.
I did. Masturbating and in the shower or anything, or trimming your groin area or anything like that. Wow. So we had to take showers in a clear curtain with people coming in the mornings, brushing their teeth, going to the bathroom, and we were washing our asses with everybody being able to see it.
Well, and I remember in the girls' house, we had 7 girls sharing a bathroom, and so people would be using the bathroom while like someone's taking a shower. I mean, there was no privacy.
Well, and we had an adult that was over the guy's house that was walking in and seeing young men, in my case, a boy that was completely naked and vulnerable in a shower with a clear shower curtain. So. That's
true. That's true.
So, I mean, there's there's that part of it too. Actually, we had 2 adults because 2 of them were over the age of 18.
That's really strange. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think. Well, I know that Mark and Leslie did not ever take any accountability, or like they never took any responsibility in trying to make sure everybody was protected from anybody who could have potentially been
right. And there's been several speculations in cases of other people doing things to other people, and so
that were not reported.
Yeah, and they never owned up to it, and they tried to just sweep it under the rug and no, it's fine, we don't do that here.
Right.
So, which is complete bullshit because they think it happens. So.
Yes. Tell me a little bit more about the way you were treated that really sticks with you.
It was more, so the guy's house was more military ran based. So like, if you did something that was seen as unbecoming or whatever, you were punished with physical punishment. So like, push-ups, squats, jumping jacks, planks, whatever, for an unseemly amount of time.
I was going to say, it's not like normal. It's very long, enduring.
Yeah,
like, so almost like torturous.
Yeah, so there was a time when it snowed and we were all playing in the snow, and I threw a snowball and hit one of the other members in the head by accident. Well, I didn't do it on purpose, and he was chasing me through the snow, and we were running, and he finally got me, but it wasn't anything violent. But they saw that as like an act of aggression on my part, so me and the other member had to go in the kitchen and do Hindu squats for roughly an hour to an hour and a half. It got to the point where there was a spiral staircase that led up to the upstairs in the men's house, and I could not walk. I couldn't walk to the staircase, and I couldn't walk up the staircase, so I had to crawl like a dog with broken legs to my bed. Yeah, my legs were completely shot. I wasn't able to use them at all. So, and all over throwing a snowball.
And Mark used to laugh at stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like if somebody was suffering, he like thought it was so funny.
So Mark left it in the hands of those 2, oversaw it, and they were playing their video games and laughing about it the whole time that me and the other member were doing squats and we asked them several times, hey, can we stop? Our legs are starting to hurt. We can't really do this much longer. And they said, no, you'll go until we tell you have to stop.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So being at the junior high, I was the only one that was there. And they were really hyper focused on grades at the time. So me and somebody else, we didn't have a 4.0 GPA, and we didn't have like the perfect grades. And so they did what they called a study hall program.
And can I just say, what's weird about that too is they were so obsessed with y'all, but I took honors Spanish and they didn't like it because I was trying to spend time studying rather than like dancing or hanging out with them. So I had to quit honor Spanish.
Well, they got really Mark got really pissed when I had to take an elective in the junior high, and there was the easiest thing I could do that would be unintrusive to whatever schedule they had was choir. And he was like, "Well, are you sure God wanted you to do that?" And I was like, "This is the only thing that I can, other than sports. This is what I got. So, like, I have to do this. I have to. This is mandated curriculum. I have to take one for the year." So
they got so annoyed because it's like, oh, well, you have to go to a choir concert or whatever.
Yeah, and stay late for practice or have trips. They viewed it as impeding on their schedule. So.
Of course, you were in study hall.
So. What would happen would be is we would get picked up from the bands at school, and they would bring us back, and we would have to sit in the living room from the time we got there, listening to just old classical music, like Mozart, Beethoven, Bach, like all that. They said it like boosted intelligence or whatever, and so we had to sit there and do homework, and if we got done, they made up shit to test us or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we would do that until dinner time, and then we would go eat dinner, come back, and we would continue to do study hall through I don't know, 12:30 at night, knowing we had to get up at 4:30 to get ready to go do Bible study the next morning.
Wow.
And even when we went on trips for vacations, we weren't allowed to play or enjoy the trip. We had to study because our grades were so poor.
And I remember this. I remember this happening.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to enjoy any of our time off or any time that we had at home. Like a couple of us had built trampolines for them that they had bought, and we had to sit there and watch other people jump on them while we read our books and study because they wanted us to have perfect 4.0 GPA. So I think during that time I was like, this is real big bullshit, and I don't enjoy this. There were other times where I would stay late at the junior high for tutoring, which, take in mind you, the tutoring here was probably about 6 miles away from their house. They forgot to pick me up. They wouldn't come pick me up, and so I had to start walking 5-6 miles to their house.
And you tried to contact them?
Oh yeah, I tried to call them several times, and they would never answer. And then
they just didn't even notice you were gone.
Yeah, no, they didn't acknowledge that I wasn't there until I showed up, and it was after dinner, and then they were vehemently pissed at me, like, well, why were you so late? And it's like, I told you I had tutoring. This is a common thing, and I tried to call you, and you didn't pick me up. And this happened more than once.
Wow.
The first time it happened, I actually ran up to the car in the middle of a four-way stop, knocked on it, was like, hey, let me in. Wow. And they were like, what the hell are you doing here? And it's like, well, you forgot to pick me up from junior high. So.
And I feel like Mark would laugh about stuff like that, too.
Mm-hmm. He did.
Yeah.
He laughed in my face about it.
Yeah.
And this was like, it happened like 3 times. Yeah. And the other 2 times I had to walk fully back to their house because nobody would answer. And they wouldn't allow us to have cell phones, so we couldn't call them on our own. We had to use other people's phones.
Right. And that's a pretty important point right there, because I think I had a cell phone during that time. And there were some others who I know that they started looking through their cell phones a little bit at that time. But you didn't have a cell phone at all.
I did not. No, I was not allowed to have a phone.
So you didn't get to contact your dad?
No, and ultimately, we'll get to this a little bit later, but that was the key way for me to getting the fuck out, was I played their own system against them, and it got me out.
Yeah.
And I'll explain what that means here in a little bit. But so we had the study hall stuff, the physical punishment stuff. There was a time when I was taken out into one of the places where there was woods, and there was 3 guys that had paintball guns, told me to run. And I said, well, what happens if I don't run? And they're like, well, we're going to shoot you standing here. So you can either run and get shot, or you're going to stand here and get shot. And they were pretty serious about it because they shot me while I was running. So,
well, I remember there was a lot of bullying amongst the guys, and even Mark bullying the girls too, because there was always pranks and stuff too. But people were really intense with that stuff, and they, like, the guys went way too far, like, often, and Mark would just laugh.
I got shot with airsoft guns plenty of times.
Well, you're not the only one. Somebody else had also, Kevin had also been shot by airsoft guns.
Yeah.
So that wasn't like uncommon for them to just let people shoot each other.
Correct.
Especially people who were older than you.
Right. And at the time, too, they were big on like the MMA, wrestling, fighting stuff. So out of nowhere, you could get pummeled.
Choked out.
Well, yeah, choked out or pummeled, and you would be tried to be forced into a fight. And I told them several times I did not enjoy that. That was not what I want to do. And it pretty much, they told me pretty much tough shit. It's going to happen anyway.
There was no such thing as boundaries. We had no respect at all from anybody. Like, they would drive you nuts.
Yeah, no, there was absolutely no boundaries. Their way of thinking of stuff was pretty fucking dumb.
Their logic doesn't logic.
No. And so the other thing that made me realize like I wanted to leave was, and this is probably in my whole life, top 5 most traumatic days that I've ever had. We had what we call a confession meeting or whatever in the guy's house, and it was to all of us to confess of stuff that was bothering us or sins that we had committed.
Which we basically had to participate in confessions whenever we had Bible studies or whenever we were meeting. Like, we basically had to spill our guts, and if we didn't, I feel like they would point you out.
Yeah, and it'd be like, "Oh, you think you're so perfect? Yes. There's nothing wrong with you. What's going on?"
Or they would say, "Well, we've been noticing this."
Well, and this was also a prime fucking opportunity for people to rat on you. So if you didn't do it in the house around Mark and Leslie, the other people that was considered their like watch eyes and mouths and ears would go report them. So
right.
We all gathered in the living room downstairs in the men's house, and we were talking about things that were bothering us. And I had said like, hey, getting into the van, sometimes the girls' rear ends are in my face, and I feel guilty about like I'm not trying to look, but I'm getting in the van and they're right there and stuff. And then I told them that I had masturbated in one of the prayer closets, and that, I don't know,
which is super normal.
Yeah, at 15
people do that.
At 15 years old, like your hormones are going crazy, and like what the hell is you supposed to do? You know.
Well, but the thing is, like, I just want to address this, like, as a counselor, that like having a sexual life, being a sexual person is fucking normal. Yeah, that is fucking normal.
It doesn't make you a deviant if you do it. And that's how they made you feel, was like you were a demon, or
something's wrong with you.
Yeah, you had something attached to you. But all the meanwhile, Mark would say stuff like, "Well, Leslie's not sucking my dick," and
he was really blunt with you guys about that stuff, right?
Yeah, he came in and point blank said it once or twice, and we were all like, "Okay, like what are we supposed to do about it?" So but so that meeting was over, and a couple of the guys went over and talked to Mark and Leslie about it. And this is the story that Shannon has shared on one of her last videos. We had a big meeting. So what they would do is when they really wanted to beat you down and point you out to people, they would call you in their living room and have everybody lined up in the doorways and on the couches and staring at you, including their children, their small children. And I had to sit on the floor. They didn't even provide me a chair to sit in. And Mark was standing above me, berating me, yelling at me. And then he was asking me inappropriate questions like, "Who were you thinking about? How did it feel? Why were you doing this?"
Yeah, it was really weird. I remember being shocked and so traumatized. And like some of the guys were even standing up around you because you were kind of in the doorway. And he was over you, essentially, like yelling at you.
Yeah, I was in the doorway at first, and then they pulled me into the middle of the living room and had me sit because they use this excuse all the time, like, "Oh, the Holy Spirit has told us that somebody has done something," which is complete bullshit. They always had people telling, ratting on each other to, and I felt like, too, at times they would gain an advantage, like a privilege or something for like, "Oh, if you do this, we'll give you this freedom," or this like a reward system for punishing other people, make them feel like shit.
Yes, absolutely. You got 1-ups for like being a snitch.
Yes. And so.
Yeah, I remember at that moment specifically thinking, why are we here? Like girls, like why are we girls here? And so that was so traumatizing to me to see that happen to you that my memory was even warped. But also they talk shit about everybody. So I think they like spread rumors that you were looking at porn or like had taken pictures, and that's like the thing is that they lie about everybody to,
Yeah, so as previously stated, I didn't have a phone. Yeah, obviously that's why I had to walk from the junior high to their fucking house, is because they didn't allow me to have a phone. So how the hell am I going to take pictures of people when I didn't have one? And two, I respected the women that were in the house way more than to sexualize them like that.
Exactly. So. You were always so nice to us, and the way that they treated you was so shitty, but I never remember you ever being weird to us or being rude, or even to Mark and Leslie. Like, you were never disrespectful.
No.
But you were a scapegoat.
Yeah, I was a catch-all for a lot of shit. I was kind of like the little strain in the drain when you wash your dishes and catches all the nasty-ass food that goes down the drain. That was me, and there was one other person that got that treatment too. But
there were a couple of others that I watched get that treatment.
Yeah.
Are you okay? Do you need a break?
No, I'm fine. Okay. No, yeah, and the other weird, traumatizing thing about that meeting was they acted like I had brought a demon into their house, and they were chasing their small children around, screaming that there's a demon in here, and they were acting like they were trying to cast it out.
Yeah.
With me in there telling me that I was demonic and all this stuff, and it was utterly humiliating because there was 20 plus people that were watching me and all this happening, and so I think after that too was when I was like, all right, I'm ready to get the fuck out of here.
I'm sure.
And I had to find a way to do it. Another thing is they never granted you privacy.
No.
So my dad worked at the Main Street Mission where we did a lot of our business. Like we ministered and stuff during the summers. And
they did a lot of their business, right?
Well, yes. Yeah, because we got a lot of food and stuff for free and clothes.
Yes.
And there was absolutely no need with the, as you can see, the amount of money they were pulling in and withholding my Social Security check. I could have been buying clothes for myself, and instead we had to get, hand-me-down stuff from the mission, which I'm not against hand-me-down clothes. Like, but when you have the means to provide it for children, you say you're going to provide for it, then fucking do it.
Yeah, because they would go buy themselves things.
Yeah.
They always had the best stuff, the new stuff, like nice clothes. Leslie would go out. I remember one time she brought me some like Bath and Body Works stuff, but she had went out and done like a whole spree.
Like Mark and Leslie always had the best clothes, and they the best shoes. Oh yeah.
And they would go out to eat and stuff, and then we're eating like a lot of Main Street Mission food. So I don't know if I mentioned this on camera or not, but we were all talking earlier, and I remember going into the pantry and like stuffing my face with granola bars, being so hungry, like having to sneak food at the Main Street Mission, sneaking food. But we mostly ate like pizza and like stuff that was frozen.
Well, there was a lot of nights too. They called it yo-yo night, like you're on your own. And so we had to go and get like cans of soup and stuff from the pantry that was there. But they would only let you take like one can at a time, even for guys, because oh, you guys don't need this, you're going to get fat, or whatever. Like
we were limited on portions.
Yeah,
we were always all wanting more. I feel like.
Yeah, because we were growing kids. The fuck do you expect? I mean, like even when we went out to restaurants, we had to share portions with other people, and that was their way of. Well, they told us flat out that like we can't afford to pay for everybody to have a meal, so you pair up, you order a big thing, and then you share it, which was obviously not enough for a kid that was 15.
Meanwhile, Mark always got a fajita.
Yeah,
and Leslie always got sodas. We definitely would like eat all the chips and share plates of rice or whatever.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and that was insane because the schedule they had us on between dance practice, traveling, and ministering, like it took a lot of energy and time from us. So like we needed nourishment and we weren't getting it.
Yeah.
And so, like, it was really unfair, and it was stupid on their part to do that. So, but yeah, I mean, the physical abuse was there. Mental and emotional was definitely there, because if you didn't read certain books, or if you didn't have something ready for your own Bible study in the mornings, because that was the thing, at times they would pinpoint somebody else out in the mornings for them to do Bible study.
What have you been learning?
Right, this is your turn to do this. And if you didn't have something, or you did something that was like what they considered so basic that they had gone over before, they would beat you down about it. Like,
they would tear you apart for that.
Yeah.
Like, well, you're not really that deep in it. Like, or they would tell you were wrong for what you found.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and also I remember trying to preach about like love or something, and they would be like, yeah, but you also have to do this.
Well, I was new into the thing, and they gave me Bible study first off, so I was asking other people like that night what to do, and they gave me like the Valley of the Bones story. Well, I did that like my first week there because I hadn't really learned how to study yet.
Yeah.
And they fucking ripped me to pieces over it. Yeah. And they were like, well, you don't know this, you haven't really studied, That's like,
why ask me to do it?
I'm like, I didn't have a life of being in the Bible before this. What the fuck makes you think that I know all this shit now? Like, I don't.
Right.
Like, it's not my fault that I don't have this knowledge. Don't rip me apart because I don't know it yet.
Yeah, they really liked to just put people down.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, if you ever had a shred of, like, self-confidence or dignity, they'd fucking strip it from you.
Yes. Especially if you thought you were having a good day.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, that's not your good day.
Yeah, they would always find some demon or something wrong with you to make you feel like shit. So,
it's true.
So, I spent about 11 months there, and it wasn't anything fantastic. Like, I made a lot of friends that was there, and obviously connections with Shayna and Shannon and a lot of the other people that were there with me.
Yeah, well, especially because of our survivors group.
Yes,
we've connected with a lot of these people.
Yes, and it took you guys a long time to find me, and me, like, yeah, it was just it was time.
We knew of other kids who had been hurt that we were trying to find.
Yes, and so it was I felt like it was kind of time to come forward and talk about this and make connections and just kind of rekindle the memories that we have and the abuse and reliving it. So, and I had so much other abuse that happened past the cult and before that I kind of just minimalized.
It was like a blip in your abuse.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, it's been 15 years since, but I just kind of minimized it
Yeah.
And another, on a funny side note, like it's funny that we're doing this interview on my birthday, because one of the most hurtful memories that I had when I was there was my 16th birthday.
Yeah.
So Caroline and Shayna, our birthdays are really close together, and so they got them cakes and made up a song on a guitar and dances and all this shit. And the only thing I got was a purity ring, and they told me point blank that we had forgotten about you.
Yeah, the purity ring also came from Shayna.
It did, yeah. It came from one of the members and not Leslie and Mark. So
they did not care about you.
No, and it's free preaching falsehoods. Like, we're going to treat them like family, yes. But how the fuck do you bring somebody in and you forget them as a person in total?
Right.
Again, to the total of like abuse, like, oh, I must be not important enough, or I'm not doing enough to seek their approval.
Yeah.
That they forgot about me as a person for my birthday, you know?
And for a teenager, that's a huge deal.
It is, because I wasn't able to get in contact with my family, so I didn't get to celebrate that with my family. That was what I had in front of me, and I didn't. Yeah. They forgot about it. You know what I mean? So, it often came up several times, like forgetting me to pick me up from school or forgetting my birthday. Yes. Like, I was just kind of like a
whatever.
Yeah, I was just a body taking up space, really.
That's a horrible way to feel.
You know, I mean, and that's how they presented it. So, I mean, without saying it, but that's how it happened.
That's how they made you feel whenever they claim to have such a nice home for teens to show people love.
Yeah.
It's like not true.
Right. And something else that they did, and I still have guilt about this to this day, is like they would assign some teenagers to recruit other teenagers to come in.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
and that's really common with
it is. And I was done the same thing with a member that was brought in. I was told to, hey, you guys came from the same background. You talk to him, you get him in here.
Yeah.
And so I did. And then shortly after that, I left. But I have still such immense guilt about, I brought this person in and this caused this for them. But at the same time, I was a child, and I really didn't feel like I had a choice, because I wasn't presented as such. I had a choice.
And that's another way that you were exploited.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very common. I mean, even Jeffrey Epstein had his victims get other victims.
Oh, yeah. So. Yeah. Another abuse story was somebody fell asleep in a van on the way back to their house. And because they ran us ragged with our schedule, but they hated you sleeping.
Yeah.
Like, you weren't allowed to sleep. You were called lazy.
Yeah, there was no rest.
Yeah, but they could nap and they could do anything that they wanted, So the punishment for that is me and the guy that fell asleep, we had to get out of the vehicle probably 2.5 miles from their house in midsummer, and they told us we had 15 minutes to run from there to their house. And obviously we didn't make it, and so we got punished again for that.
What did you have to do after that?
More push-ups, more
physical.
It was military ran.
Yeah.
It was like, if you didn't meet a standard, you didn't do something they liked, it was, hey.
But the standard was impossible.
Correct. And their mindset was, you're going to be smart or strong, and if you can't figure it out, then I guess you're going to be strong. So.
Yeah. Tell me about not giving you privacy.
So my dad worked at the mission, and he lived there after a certain time of me being there, because he felt like it was a way for him to be close to me, which was not allowed by Mark and Leslie. So anytime that my dad and I were in the same vicinity at the mission, when I felt like I wanted to get out, there was always somebody right behind me that would go tell Mark and Leslie anything that I said. So I was unable to talk to my dad about, hey, this is what's going on, get me out.
Right.
And even my dad, after he got me out, was asking me, why didn't you tell me anything? And it's like, I couldn't. There was no, I wanted to so badly before now, but I didn't have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
And so lack of privacy with that was a big thing. Because you always had somebody with you.
Right.
And it was never of the opposite sex. They always wanted boys with boys, girls with girls. Like, and even when we would go to places to pray, they never wanted opposite genders to pray for one another.
Yeah.
So invasion of privacy on that. They would talk to your teachers.
Because they wanted to get ahead of it, so that they made us look like troubled teens.
Correct. And there was not somebody from Adullam in the junior high with me, but there was people that were friends with their friends.
Yeah.
And so they would always ask them how I was doing and everything. So
it was spying on you, essentially.
Yeah. And
they believe everything that they're told.
Right. And that was the thing with everybody in high school. They had each other there. It was just me. So they felt like they were losing a little bit of control. So they tried to do everything else they could to gain more of it back.
Yeah.
Which included bringing other people in that weren't directly involved with us to make sure that I was doing the right thing. So I felt like I never had any shred of like personal life, because you, as a guy, you weren't allowed to talk to girls, you weren't allowed to hang out with friends, you weren't allowed to have any kind of personal life outside of Adullam, which, by the way, screams fucking cult.
Yes, it's a cult.
Like, you can't be with your family and you can't see friends that you made, and much less you can't make girl friends, you know. So,
or else you're trying to be inappropriate.
Yeah, like you're trying to fuck them, pretty much. Basically, is what to not beat around the bush about it.
It's true.
So
how did your dad feel about this after a little while you've been there?
So he was upset that I wasn't able to call him. And so he mentioned this to me several times, like, why can't we come see you? Why can't we call you? What's going on? And I could just tell him, like, hey, I'm doing really well, putting on the fake facade bullshit that they were telling us to tell our parents so that we would stay longer.
Yeah.
It just giving him the fake stuff. And again, like I said, there was always somebody with me, so I couldn't really tell him what was going on behind the scenes, or I'd get 10 times worse when I got back.
Yeah. Abuse is very complicated. It is not easy to get out or to tell anybody what's going on.
Correct. Yeah. And so what happened eventually was my dad told me, and this is where I used their system against them, and I did it smartly. He said, if you don't call me within the next month, I'm pulling you out. And I was like, well, shit, that's easy enough, because they don't keep track whether we call our families or not.
Did you feel any relief when he said that?
Fuck yeah, I did.
Oh my God.
No offense, but fuck yeah, I did.
No, but for real, like,
yeah, I was.
You were like, oh my God, finally.
I was like, God, this is a way out. Sweet fucking ass.
Yeah.
And so, sure shit, I didn't call him for a month, and then I showed up one day, and Mark and Leslie looked really pissed when I walked in the main house, and they're like, hey, your dad's gonna be here to pick you up. Go pack your stuff. In not so kind of words, yelling at me, telling me that I was a failure and that everything that I was going to do in life was going to fail and succeed, or fail at succeeding, and I was not going to be anything without them, which, by the way, fuck you, because I've had a very successful life up to this point. I've got 4 very happy children. I've got a very enduring wife. I've got a great job, and I've had a long-standing military career that I can be proud of. Right. So for you to tell me that I was going to fail, you can fuck off. So,
how does that feel to say that?
Very relieving, because I am not a 15-year-old kid anymore. I'm 31, and I'm by far not fucking scared of you.
Yeah.
So, but in loose terms, that's what they were screaming at me when he came to pick me up, and I had all my stuff ready and got out, and he took me back to the mission, and I think my dad bought me a phone at that point in time, and Mark somehow got the number. And he was trying to recruit me back after I had left, saying that there was no corporal punishment, no more physical punishment. Things are going to be different. And I said, no, thanks, I'm out. And so they tried one more effort. They became friends with people that had a skateboarding company that was a Christian skateboarding group. And they were like, hey, we're going to go on a skateboarding trip to Little Rock. If you want to go, you can. And of course, I was like, cool, I'll go, be a chance to hang out with the guys. And it was a fucking recruiting trip. It was them trying one more effort to get me back in. So once that didn't work, they cooperated with the people that owned their Main Street mission, that my dad was living on the property and working for them, because that was the key deal. Like, you work here, you help us, you stay. Once I decided not to go back, they kicked us off the property.
That's awful.
They told us, hey, you've got a certain amount of days to leave. And if you haven't left by then, we're going to call the cops and have you escorted off the property. So
it seems like they're punishing you guys for you not being in that anymore.
It was very much retaliation.
Yeah.
It very much, because they didn't get what they want. They acted like a bunch of angry toddlers, and any way that they could get back at you, they would. So kicking me and my dad off their property, making us homeless again, was not shit to them, because they had a house and they were safe. But because I didn't want to go back and suffer more with them, than me and my dad both were going to suffer.
Well, and clearly they're not getting your check anymore. So
no, my dad took that back.
Yeah.
And so I had this talk with him after I left, and he was very curious. He was like, how was it? And I told him all the experiences. Told him I never saw the money.
Yeah.
That I was being abused in all sorts of manners. And all of that, and he, rightfully so, luckily this time, was pissed.
Yeah.
Did he do anything about it? No, he did not.
Yeah.
Which, if it was me with my kids, 1, I wouldn't have never let them go. But 2, if somebody ever did anything to my kids like that, I would be out for blood, I feel like, to do right by my children.
I think a lot of people would.
Yeah. So
it's infuriating, and some of our parents were also victims. So
yes,
like they could have done better in a lot of ways, but also that's the kind of people Mark and Leslie take advantage of.
Yeah, and I think that's the part where I was most frustrated with my dad now in life. I mean, he's passed on now, but I've questioned, like, why did you let me make my own decisions? Why?
Yeah.
And in a way, I'm grateful for that because I've learned a lot of lessons on how to be a parent through everything that I've been through, and this situation too with my kids. It makes me more protective about who's around my kids and who to introduce and when.
But also, could there have been a better way?
Yeah, and that's why I said earlier, I want to, like, doing all of this, experiencing all this trauma. I would much rather take all this on me so that my kids can have a better life.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I wish I hadn't, because it really affects you as a person. It's fucked me up for a while. So this is the first time in 15 years that any of this, outside of my wife, has heard of, outside of the house, because I think of everything I went through, I just kind of put it on the back burner for a while. And then I got to a point where I could start thinking of everything that I've gone through. And this was like, holy shit, this was pretty serious.
Right.
Like, as a 15-year-old kid, you saw and went through things you should have never have. And at people's hands that were supposed to be helping you, and in turn took advantage.
Right.
So
exactly. We should be able to do that safely.
Yeah, I wish people were just honest.
Yeah.
If what they pitch is what they do, then it would be a lot better. Which, in turn, the fallout from all of this is I have a huge diversion to churches, and it's not necessarily I say church, it's just a fucking building, but it's the people.
Well, and that environment is very triggering.
It is, because a thing that I learned while I was there was you got to see an inner structure of how churches worked.
Yeah.
And you got to see it with the covers pulled back, because they were harsh on us, so we were harsh on everybody else anywhere that we went. Which is kind of funny, because they say don't judge. Like, when we go to church, don't judge, don't do this. But you could see them doing it, and then you would also in return doing it.
Well, and they love to judge them by their fruit stuff,
Funny story is I pissed a pastor off to a church because I didn't agree with how he was ministering, and he came up to me and I talked to him, and he was like, "Who are you, this 15-year-old, to tell me what to do?" And I just politely told him, I was like, "I'll ask you a question. If you can't answer my question, then you need to go back and read your Bible and reevaluate how you preach, or if you answer correctly, I'll leave you alone." And he said, "Okay, I'll make that deal." And I said, "Fine. Who kissed the keys of heaven and never entered?" He couldn't answer. And then he was guessing all these different names, and I'm like, "Obviously you don't know your Bible that well, so you are in no position to guide people," which is wrong, by the way, which is a key form of judgment that they imposed on us, which was frowned upon, but they did it.
They like to encourage us to, like, piss people off.
They would, yeah. And so the guy, I finally told him the answer and told him that he needed to go back and read his Bible, and then I walked away. So that's the kind of thing that they imparted.
Encouraged.
Go
preach on lunch tables or whatever.
Well, it was a mandatory requirement when we were in schools to be an ASU leader or CSU leader. Well, for me it was, because I was the only one in the junior high. They were like, "You have to do this. Like, this is not something that you are going to be given the option for. You're going to do this whether you like it or not."
Yeah.
And so I was forced into that, which I was very uncomfortable at the time, because I wasn't really comfortable enough in Christianity to be teaching others.
Right.
But we had to do it anyways.
Right.
So.
Well, I mean, good Lord, you've been through a lot with these people, and the good thing is that this truth is coming to light, and there's a lot of things coming out.
Yep.
And now that we're able to speak and tell people how it really was, Mark and Leslie don't look so shiny anymore.
They look like shit, to be honest with you.
They sure do.
I mean, you polish a turd, still a turd, right?
Yeah. Yes. Well, Dillon, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for, coming on, and you're always welcome to do more in the future if you think of more things and want to do more.
I will. If you want me to come back and do some more, I definitely will.
Well, it's always up to you, and it's just always here whenever you need it. But mostly, thank you for being so vulnerable and willing to talk about things that are really hard for a lot of people to talk about. Yeah. But I know that this is going to help other people who've been through similar things.
Yeah. So I want to look at the camera when I say this, right? So to guys that have gone in and out of Adullam with Mark and Leslie, I don't want you to feel like it makes you less than or anything like that to come forward and sit where I'm sitting now, or besides Shannon, and do these in the future, and make you feel like that because you were wronged or you have these feelings or it caused trauma and you have emotional responses to it, that you're less than. You're not. And it took me a long time to figure that out. I want this to be encouraging to parents who have had kids that have gone through this and have kids of their own now, of us that have gone through and had kids, to learn from these experiences and be encouraged by the fact that we support all of you, and that anytime you want to come forward, you want to talk about any of this stuff, that we're going to be here to listen and not judge. The more people we can prevent from getting hurt, hopefully in the future, this stops. Because children hurt is not a good thing, and there's been hundreds.
There's been a lot.
Yeah.
Like, we're still counting up the victims. That's the problem. Like, we know of at least 36 at this point that are in our group, but there's a ton more than that, because I've had people from Hamilton, I've had people like from after Adullam, and then there are people who are on the outskirts who didn't even live there who were also hurt. Right. So it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of victims.
Well, it's generational, really, because if you think about it, we were there, and I was there in 2009 and 2010, and there was people that left all the way in 2022, 23, 24, 25.
Oh yeah, there was people who were with them. I mean, even since they've been with the ramp, and now there's Hamilton people that are with them.
And there's people that have grown up in teen years, because they had brought people in, from my understanding, that was younger than 15.
Yeah.
You bring somebody in that's so impressionable as like a 12, 13-year-old.
Yeah, they had really young kids there for a little bit.
Yeah, because like I said, at the time when I was there, I was the youngest one, and it really fucked me up for a long time. So I can't imagine. And this was young females, not males. And they were still doing the same things that you've seen in all these prior videos to young girls and men coming up. So if we can stop that, it would be a tremendous feat, and to let them know that they haven't won. So
right. Well, Dillon, thank you again. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, no worries.